Welcome to Real Wake Up. I'm Dean Val, here with Dean Kevin. Today we are reviewing the movie Devil's Advocate, 1997, with Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. Fun movie. As we talk, I suggest you look at it as the devil here, played by Al Pacino, could be the god of the religions as well. You might consider that as we're discussing this, because that could be a real possibility that he be playing both sides, good cop, bad cop. I'm going to also read a little bit here of a plot summary, just also to get us started. As Gainesville, Florida defense attorney Kevin Lomax, who has never lost a case, defends schoolteacher Lloyd Geddes against a charge of child molestation, he belatedly realizes his client is guilty, and local reporter Larry warns him a guilty verdict is inevitable. However, through a harsh cross-examination, Kevin destroys the victim's credibility, securing a not guilty verdict. Subsequently, a representative of a New York City law firm offers Kevin a large sum of money to assist a jury selection. After the jury delivers a not guilty verdict, the head of the firm, John Milton, offers Kevin a large salary and an upscale apartment if he joins the firm. Kevin accepts the job, and he and his wife, Marianne, move to Manhattan. He is soon spending most of his time at work, leaving Mary Ann feeling isolated. Kevin's fundamentalist mother, Alice, visits New York City and suggests they both return home, but Kevin refuses. When billionaire Alex Cohen is accused of murdering his wife, his stepson, and a maid, Milton assigns the high-profile case to Kevin. This demands more of Kevin's time, further separating him from Mary Ann. And he begins to fantasize about his co-worker, Chris DeBella. Mary Ann begins seeing visions of the partner's wives becoming demonic, and has a nightmare about a baby playing with her removed ovaries. After a doctor declares her infertile, she begs Kevin to return to Gainesville, of which he disapproves. Milton suggests Kevin step down from the trial to tend to his wife, but Kevin claims that if he does and she recovers, he may resent her for costing him the case. Ed Barsoon, the firm's managing partner, is convinced that Kevin is competing for his job when he discovers Kevin's name on the firm's charter. Surprised, Kevin denies any knowledge of this, and Eddie threatens to inform the United States Attorney's Office of the law firm's activities. Kevin tells Milton about Eddie's threats, but Milton dismisses them. Eddie is then beaten to death by vagrants with demonic appearances. Mary Ann witnesses this, disturbing her further. While preparing Melissa Black, Cohen's secretary, to testify about Cohen's alibi, Kevin realizes she is lying and tells Milton he believes Cohen is guilty. Despite this, Milton offers to back him regardless, and Kevin proceeds with her testimony and the trial, winning an acquittal for Cullen. Afterwards, Kevin finds Mary Ann covered with a blanket in a nearby church. She claims Milton raped and brutalized her that day, but Kevin denies this as he was with Milton in court. Mary Ann drops her blanket, revealing her naked body covered with cuts and scratches. Assuming she injured herself, Kevin commits her to a mental institution. Alice, Kevin, and Pam Garrity, his case manager from the firm, visit Mary Ann at the institution. After seeing Pam as a demon, Mary Ann hits her with a hand mirror and barricades the room. As Kevin breaks down the door, Mary Ann commits suicide by cutting her throat with a shard of glass. Alice reveals that Milton is Kevin's father, whom she met in New York decades ago. Kevin leaves the hospital to confront Milton, who admits to raping Mary Ann. Kevin fires a pistol into Milton's chest, but the bullets are ineffective. Milton reveals himself as Satan, and Kevin blames him for everything that happened. Milton explains that he merely set the stage and that Kevin could have left at any time. Kevin realizes he always wanted to win, no matter what the cost. Milton tells Kevin that he wants Kevin and Christabella, Kevin's half-sister, to conceive a child, the Antichrist. Kevin initially appears to acquiescence, but then abruptly cites free will and shoots himself in the head. Finding himself back at the recess of the Getty's trial, Kevin announces that he cannot represent his client despite the threat of disbarment. Because of his withdrawal, Larry pleads for a high-profile interview, promising to make Kevin a celebrity. Encouraged by Mary Ann, Kevin agrees after they leave. Larry transforms into Milton, once again relishing the sin of vanity. And hi, Peter. Welcome to the Reel to Reel Wake Up. Are you
Hi,
there?
Dal.
Yeah, let's get Kevin to start us off here. Go ahead, Kevin.
As the movie begins, we see the main character, Kevin, played by Keanu Reeves, involved with the legal law system. As we know, this planet is 100% human farming. It is a controlled planet, a controlled creation overwhelmingly. As agreements through the overall consciousness over the eons of so-called time have been extended to that which controls this simulation, the form the controlling beings take, tending to be reptilian, but there are many alien factors and tiers of the systems that extend through creation and operate on the various planets that are enslaved. And as agreement to control is secured through the consciousness, a consciousness that effects then the simulation in accordance with the particulars of the idea agreements, so then do we have a simulated experience overall of restriction and control. On the planet Earth, then, as one example of innumerable planets under similar circumstances, control, agreement is maintained through the systems that are established. What makes sense would be living on a planet and in support of the natural environment that supports us, a survival in creation that makes sense with life. The examples are all around, of animals, the birds, the indigenous species of humans before the so-called civilized era, all making sense with life and not destroying the natural environment, not creating systems and industry that really isn't necessary for survival purposes, but more a control mechanism where self-sufficiency gives way to dependency on the established systems to survive. And as the intent behind all that is created by the controller's hand is for control purposes, agreement to the marketed creations will then have the simulated effect of that which the idea represents behind the surface, a controlled experience, lifetime after lifetime, of unconsciousness and enslavement to the controllers and their systems. And as control and restriction is designed to suppress awareness, as the consciousness of restriction ideas becomes ever more compacted, so the simulator reflects this overall restriction and compacts in on itself, going through its demise, as the simulator is the consciousness. And really, the legal systems are designed to more so protect the elites and the controllers, as vast quantities of monies are usually required for the hiring of the lawyers. The greater the wealth of an individual, the more likely the legal systems will benefit the individual when it comes to winning cases. And the corruption of the legal systems is well documented, marketed as a necessity. But again, do we see the animals or the indigenous peoples ever needing a legal system? As all beings, if connected with the real awareness, will always do more so that which makes sense with all life and awareness. And through awareness, will individuals realize the effects for every decided choice they make. There can be no better regulating mechanism than the mechanics of creation, once we understand how it works. For our choices, our causes, always generate effects that equal and reflect them. Abrasive action will result in abrasive situations for ourselves, as through the cause to effect mechanic we have in reality decided to experience just that, unfavourable situations and circumstances. As our experience always is based on what we decide, the nature of the idea programs we insert into the simulator generating a consciousness. So really, it's a mechanic that polices itself, distributes justice, if you will, and negates the need for legal systems. Although the consciousness of humanity is such that to be told what to do is preferable, to have systems in place that provide what is a limited and restricting experience, but one that the individual doesn't have to then figure out and take responsibility for. People then want to be controlled and told what to do, and agreement then for the systems is very easy to maintain, as most can't conceive of a world absent of these systems, especially with the awareness to be self-sufficient so very curtailed, with unconsciousness and dependency a preference. As to be free beings of light, that which we are, we do rather need to be liberated from the ideas of authorities and control, to be self-sufficient through all creation and into the real universes of the is. For the isness is an overall awareness everything, and so how can it be that a standing as this isness everything that we are could include a dependency on anything else, as we would be this everything isness? So what else is there that you would need, aside from this isness everything that you already are? And additionally, with these created systems, which, as with anything created, are ideas, any focus, agreement, or attention placed on ideas will keep everyone literalized, one-dimensional. If it is just creational ideas that are focused upon, and will keep everyone from the recognition of other parts of the self, dimensions of creation, and beyond that, the real awareness and the isness true reality. The controllers do seek to tie everyone up with ideas, to have these ideas constantly considered, embraced, clung to keep everyone the effects of the consciousness, retained in creation, and continued agreeable slaves for the support of the controllers and a simulator by their dark force design.
There's a couple quotes by John Milton, who's the devil in the movie here, played by Al Pacino. He said one of them was, "I'm the embodiment of law itself." And the other one is that lawyers are the devil's ministry, which is interesting because, yes, the authoritarian idea is a playground for controlling people, because naturally people don't know everything. We don't know everything. So people rely on experts and professionals and those who know something, supposedly. So this is a breeding ground for authoritarian control by others, if we're not careful. And being the human nature that we are, people tend to get lazy and just rely on authorities and not do their own research. So this movie really shows us how, it's interesting they use attorneys to, as devil isn't the attorney. So this shows you that laws, restrictions, even guidelines are a way for the dark forces, you could say, to control mankind. And it's just a good way to deceive people with something they think is above, something is righteous or whatever you want to call it, but it's just a way, it's a control factor. Peter, do you have anything, a comment here?
What I wrote was that the devil's advocate suggests that the satanic lord is the same as the so-called good side, and that it is okay what they do with the reptilian or alienation or otherwise control related, because we need to be so in order to survive here. And additionally, one can play as a Jesus advocate, as an example, with the same results, even if the method is different. That is, to get the ones who don't know to accept the way being offered by whomever is offering it, by force or love, whichever works. This being using the force of, let's say, economics and authoritarian legal positions, which is commonly being used in every avenue that we've been able to approach. And noticeable, the little man is unable to, or in this case, the lawyer, to get out of using the system in order to gain what he wants to do. That is Keanu Reeves. My observation is that he is being marketed to use the manipulative legal model, and therefore he has no outage, that is, or getting beyond that which he's being used for, and or using legal positions and principles and laws, which he may or may not actually believe in or accept. Nonetheless, he doesn't have any other alternative, although he's been, and I think in the movie he is seeking that. I'm not sure how to explain this in terms of the outcome of the movie, which I didn't quite remember at this point. Maybe that'll be the next part two here of what you're all talking about. So how did that, is that good there?
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Let me also interject that there's another influence here playing in this, and that is the influence. The devil, you could say, uses the influence to position people, and you don't really hear that in the religious texts much, or if at all. But there's the good guy, the good God. There's the devil, and then there is actually an influence that is created by the consciousness of the people's desires that the devil uses, or God uses, to control people. I'll read something that Milton said here. Again, Milton was played by Al Pacino, the devil, supposedly the devil. And we know John Milton, was the poet. This is a 17th century poet that wrote Paradise Lost, that he embellished the creation story from the Bible about Adam and Eve and being tempted by Satan, etc. So it's interesting he used that name, John Milton, as his character. But Milton says, why not? I am here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began. I've nurtured every sensation man has inspired to have. I cared about what he wanted, and I never judged him. Why? Because I never rejected him. In spite of all his imperfections, I'm a fan of man. I'm a humanist, maybe the last humanist. So there's a lot here. One thing he's saying, that the way he's talking, he didn't create man. So that's a clue to what really is. We created ourselves. We weren't created by some God or entity. So he's admitting this in a statement here. And he's admitting that he's using, well, he's not admitting it, but he's implying that all the sensations we have, etc., he's using those for his advantage as a control factor. And he's not saying to worship him either, but that'll come later. And also it implies he's a trickster, which the movie really portrays really well, that he just positions people in a certain way where through their free will, they make their own poor choices. So it's really interesting. Each character in the movie is, there's a lot to each character, and there's just a lot to this movie and how it can help us wake up to something more. But it really takes a decision to do so. This isn't just for entertainment, but it's for us to wake up, and that's why we're doing these shows.
Also, I've been reading here where it says that Al Pacino, this was considered to be by one his last great role, and that the movie should have gotten the string of Oscars for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Actor. It took the background of the firm and raised it up quite a few levels. So I thought I'd read that just as a relation, to the movie and its quality. But it also is pointing out at a very deep level the entire field of this alienation and legalization principles, which are foundations they've been using since, actually goes back to the new Aegeus, rather the old Aegeus of Zeus, which was the original model that relates to the Orion visitation on Earth, let's say, and creating a module of human behaviorism and addiction and the genome factor creation. And that whole thing, which is all related to the God, Lord, Creator, which has been established and then arguably in legal terms or otherwise, but religious terms, that the Satan had taken this over and is manipulating that whole field of principles for its own gain. And that was good. Thanks. I think that went together.
Thanks. And let me remind you, since you didn't see the movie, that in the beginning of the movie, when he was defending this pedophile, he had this experience in the bathroom that it was actually an experience that he learned, that he killed himself in. And then at the end of the movie, he just woke up from it. He realized, what could be, and he changed his course of action, and he decided not to defend this fellow. And then as he's walking out, the court, one of the reporters, hounds him and says, this has got to be in the newspaper. This, people are going to want to know what you did. It's such a virtuous thing, all this. And then in the end, this reporter turns into Milton, the devil. So he's trying to, again, tempt him with vanity here. But you see how it never ends. This influence, or the devil, will always be here in creation. It's never going to go away, because that's the nature of this place. So it shows you that at the end of the movie, that there's no resolve to anything here. And to think there's a happy ending, it ain't so. This place is, especially now in these years, it's in its demise. So the only way out is to become more aware and to see your way out of it, perceive your way out of it into a better position for yourself. And I know this is hard for people to get, because this is not along the lines of the traditional spiritual views. But that's why we're doing these movies, to help people get through themselves and get to more awareness, so they can help themselves. Okay, Kevin?
The control systems extend through a creation and are rather tiered, like a pyramid, from the planetary systems to off-planet, then ultimately leading to the individual, from which all the control stems from. That all the tiers of it through a creation prop up and support through agreement, and that would be the triple-headed reptilian known as the Calorm God, who resides on the fourth life level of creation, the mental level, one of the unseen dimensions of creation that most are unaware of. Yet every personal self and the awareness that animates it is a part of, as all consciousness, effects, the life levels of the simulation. The personal self expresses through the aspects of it the 5 body vehicles into the corresponding 5 life levels from the physical to the etheric, and the Kalorm has established himself as this overlord, this life level god of the 4th dimensional psych realm level, again a position that can only be and be maintained through agreement, and all the systems, through all the planets of creation, through the life levels down to the physical, are a support structure for the Kalorm overall. And in order to garner agreement, the Kalorm god represents everything, all the ideas the reptilians and other species of controllers have created on the Kalorm's behalf, that if agreed with, support then ultimately this 4th life level overlord. The Kalorm, like any of the reptilian overlords of the life levels, only have their positions based on agreement, and as they market their ideas, to cast as wide an agreement net as possible through their multi-layered controlling systems, so will then every religion, every spiritual path, every system created, generally either be by controlling reptilians' design, or be infected, taken over by the controlling reptilians, and infused with their created ideas. And so all this, all of creation effectively at this moment, the consciousness then overall, is to agreement with the Kalorm and his position. So in fact, every religion created on the earth, and anywhere else on any planet, that religion of any nature is introduced throughout creation, is by reptilian design, ideas then that have all the worship and devotion directed toward the same being overall, the Kalorm god. For worship, praying, is really begging. Agreement then that it is the Kalorm that provides what people desire, that people have to secure their wants through the graces of others, whereas in fact everyone can generate whatever they want in creation through the cause and effect mechanics of it, and only if we decide that others are our providers. So this molds our consciousness into a simulation that equals exactly what we have decided, experience based on dependency on others, and we can diminish our own creative abilities by virtue of us effectively deciding that we can create for ourselves nothing other than what God provides, as our simulation always is based on our decision parameters. And indeed, the Kalorm not only represents all gods in all religions, but all positions that are the opposite, the main villains to the gods, Satan, the devil, etc., and whatever other religions may present as the anti-being to their main deity, and the movie would reveal the presence of the devil as the top individual in the lawyer's firm, and in a sense this would be accurate, as all the systems lead to the Calorm's door ultimately. And the movie presents us with the churches, the God-grovelling mother of Kevin, the marketing of religion as representing something of a protection against the evils of the devil, but again with God and the devil as in fact the same individual. It's all agreement to the same character, the Calorm. And we see how those that support the Calorm the most are those that are the most highly rewarded consequently. Those that climb the echelons of control will have their expensive cars, their elaborate lifestyles. As the greater contribution you make to the control systems, the more the control systems reward you. The Calorm and the controlling systems of elites will always be seeking talent, those with skill sets they can utilize. And so, quite naturally, Kevin would climb the ladder, as it were. His services to the overall control systems, resulting in an increasingly lavish lifestyle, and he would be more so in the company of controllers higher up in the hierarchy, who share the same ambitious controller ladder climbing inclinations, although always Kevin's decision to make, his choices, that of fortune and prestige, would have his experience more and more aligning with the controlling reptilians, featuring directly in their experience, their parties, their gatherings. We can only share simulated experiences with others if our causes, our ideas, decisions and intent match theirs, and then agreements through a collectively shared intentionality rather meshes our consciousness with theirs. Karmic entanglements and attachments that will very likely retain then the individuals involved in each other's experiences, unless idea causes of decisions differ, and so the effects are no longer in conjunction, and the necessary requirements for being so, for being amidst the controllers, would be rather apparent, as Kevin would have to be quite willing to defend the most notorious murderers and the ill-intended, quite prepared then to be a part of that which is as far from supporting of life as you can be, of being a part of the destructive systems of overall control, regardless of the restricting consequences for others. Of course, individuals don't just happen to find themselves with opportunities to be in controlling system positions and rubbing shoulders with reptilian elites, and indeed in Kevin's case, the Calorm himself, such choices, attitudes, and the requisite consciousness overall is developed over lifetimes, and generally If an individual continues along controlling lines, they project more so into future experiences in escalating positions for themselves in the controlling hierarchy. But with any system, any individual, even as powerful as the Calorm or any highly placed controller may be, they only have that power through agreement. Absent of it, and they can't express their power in the simulation of those that retract agreement from them, as again the simulated experience we have individually and collectively is based on the decisions we make, and only if we agree to another's power over us can this express as a simulation of us being subjugated in our lifetimes of experience.
And I'll read something Milton said here. Goes along those lines, the God idea. Let me give you a little inside information about God. God likes to watch he's a prankster. Think about, he gives you instincts. He gives you this extraordinary gift. And then what does he do? I swear, for his own amusement, his own pleasure, cosmic gag reel. He sets the rules in opposition. It's the goof of all time. Look but don't touch but don't taste, etc., etc. He's a sadist. He's an absentee landlord. Worship that, never. So imagine you were in a position here for the devil or God. I mean, which would be more fun, playing pranks on people, controlling them, maneuvering them, or being the goody good guy, playing the harp or something. I mean, it seems like it'd be more fun being the devil, So this is what I see him as here. He's kind of on the side. He's two-sided. It's not like he has two heads even. It's just like he has, he's free will, just like anybody else. He has two sides to himself. He can do good. He can do so-called evil. But of course, you could have more fun doing evil things. So that's why he did he's trying to line up Kevin to be to make love to his half sisters, so they can create the Antichrist and promote his lineage there. Have fun with that. I mean, he just has all sorts of fun, and he's actually very creative the way he does things. I'm not promoting him, but I'm just saying, the way we have it here, you can see how being the good person actually doesn't work, because okay, so you're a good person, but you get deceived, you get taken advantage of all the time, because this world is not about being good or bad. It's about being real and waking up. We're being tested here, gaining experience and all that stuff. But it's not about being a good person here. That doesn't work. I mean, you can try it, but in the end, it doesn't mean you've woken up to anything. It just means you're following the rules, you could say, the guidelines of what people have set up to be so-called good. I mean, there's consideration for others, that, and agreements. You honor your agreements, etc. But beyond that, it's this. You have the freedom to come and go wherever you want. But the way this creation is set up, there's so many rules and regulations, and beholden to the authorities, that it's totally enslavement here. This is a human farming planet. And then he also said, you never think I was a master of the universe. Again, he goes into where he's kind of more sly. He doesn't want to be noticed, there's that part of him too, but he'd rather work behind the scenes and pull the strings that way. That's his trip here, Milton, because see other people basically work for him, or he's basically the guy who pulls the strings and watches too, and he doesn't have to be in the forefront. Okay, Peter, do you have anything? Comment?
Yeah, I wrote down the following. First, I looked up the, it's self-explanatory. During the canonization, this is the origin of the devil's advocate. During the canonization, it is that declaring that a person who has died was a saint, the process of which the Roman Catholic Church, an official was appointed to argue against the canonization of the candidate. This is done to properly justify the merits of that candidate. The official was known as the devil's advocate. Okay. Source is the idioms.com. And then I wrote, this also presents us with an advocate who could say the devil is actually the vehicle of defense of Jesus or the Christians, due to his counterposition, which thus assumes the opposite side must exist, thus making both sides real, despite the fact that they are really self-created and both sides of the coin, and also one and the same, both of which we see as a polarity, and that is the human view, such as we are in a three-dimensional world, and it is all that exists, and it is a world of us versus them, never a unity, but it is of relative association. So God is out there and we are here, or the universe is in between us and God. Either way, the devil arguments make it an avocation of the prison planet law. Funny business all the way around.
Yeah, that's very
Bad
good.
statement, nauseating statement.
Yeah. Without the Joker, it couldn't be a Batman, doing his thing. So that's good, that's very good. It creates the opposition, creates the control,
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Where was that from, you say?
I wrote that just now.
You did, okay. You're the scholar. Okay, very good.
Sometimes I have a hard time composing my thoughts. I've got to call on the shadow side and the saint side at the same time, and then remember everything, and it's a bit of a challenge. A great writer will certainly attest to that.
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
Okay, Kevin, number 3.
And we could see in the movie also how the various characters, the women in particular, who were associated with the elite tiers of the control systems, were revealed as very monstrous in their appearances. For that which we decide, choose, the way we fashion our consciousness, not only affects our circumstances and positions in life, but our body forms also, and the more abrasive, destructive, and restricting of others our consciousness of idea decisions are decided to be, so our simulated effect experience equals this abrasiveness, and this is especially reflected through the body forms and the extent of their distortion. The reptilian body form is an expression generally of a consciousness that is based on controlling inclinations and restriction of others, as are the various demonic forms, the entities, werewolves, vampires, etc., and so those that choose a long, abrasive, distorted, not making sense with, or supporting life, lines of ideas, tend to find themselves becoming reptilian, or taking on these monstrous forms, even to the extent that the body form can become little more than animal-like. And on the real side, in the reality of the is, everything must be what it is now. Everything is what it is deciding. The effects of the consciousness are revealed as it currently stands. It just takes a while for it to process through to the effect culmination on the physical, as the agreed to mechanics of the physical level include the idea of time, that the effects will follow, but they are not instantly so, as the consciousness processes causes to effects in sequences of phases, but the effects show up eventually, and the body forms we will assume based on the decisions we make. So it was almost as though the wife of Kevin had a real side glimpse of the actual forms of the women she was in the company of, forms that instantly reflect the consciousness, as in reality it must be, as everything is. It was more a case, however, that the demonic women were allowing then the individual to see their actual form, absent of the physical level forms they currently possess. Some individuals can see the real side from the physical, and they can then either see the culmination of the consciousness expressing a form that equals its construction, or see individuals as they actually are behind the forms they adopt, as the controlling reptilians are in fact masterful shapeshifters. But the controllers that operate on the earth maintain their human form in the public arena. But some individuals are gifted in that they can see the actual forms behind the outward guises. Clearly, Kevin's wife didn't have this capability, but when we agree to individuals, as we allow them into our experience, we agree with the entirety of their consciousness package of intent and so forth, and we rather can then have any idea that they wish to create also featuring in our simulation. If individuals had psychic science, ethereal ability, if they can alter the simulation through a creational manipulation, or maybe if they can facilitate the ability of others to see onto the real side, the other dimensions of the simulator beyond just the physical, then agreement with such individuals could have them altering your perceptions, that you could see them for what they actually are, if it was their inclination to do so, and quite clearly This was the motivation with these controller-type demonic women, to cause torment. And the same occurrence took place with the devil, the Kalorm, as he could manipulate the simulation, change the decided laws of the consciousness that effect the simulation, that those in agreement with him, that allowed him into their simulation by default, were also agreeing with the Kalorm's potential manipulations of their perceptions and their simulated reality. And as the Kalorm oversees the consciousness from his position, as he has access to then the causal level, the seat of the Akashic records of the lifetimes of all, as he can peruse at leisure the consciousness of all in the simulation, he can determine that which is transpiring with each individual, that which will effect into each individual's simulated reality, based on the cause ideas that are being decided, inputted into the consciousness. He can seemingly then read minds, and know things he possibly could not have, from a one-dimensional, personal perspective, as with the example on the tube train, where he was confronted by two aggressive individuals, and revealed how one of them had a cheating wife, and all the controlling individuals, all the dark force agents and minions, are placed and distributed through all the systems, and would have key influential positions to manage humanity, including the sports and entertainment arenas, as we would see in the movie, the Kalorm, the devil, be greeted and evidently on very friendly terms with Don King, a high-profile boxing promoter, for really, you can't be in a position of power in any of the systems of the earth unless you are a controller, as the earth is completely managed and regulated, and only those that are part of the controlling systems will feature in positions of influence and power within the created systems. And in the movie, we could see quite demonstrably how it is never a secure place to be as a part of the controlling systems. For if you outlive your usefulness, as your agreements are such that allow you to be dispatched at any time, as this is rather the agreement you take on as you pitch in with the dark forces, so can you be at any time eliminated, as exemplified when they killed Eddie, one of the controllers that were part of the firm Kevin now was working for. Interestingly, it was through other random individuals that the assassination took place, as though the killers were controlled like puppets. For agreement through the consciousness to the Kalorm does allow then that he can directly manipulate you in this way, again based on permission decisions that this can be so. If you agree to an individual's power over you, you agree to their expressing of this power in any way they like, and with whatever the abilities they have to do so. And so can those with creational manipulating skills do such as that which the movie portrayed. They can control individuals like pawns to carry out such acts of assassination. And indeed, all personal self-immersed individuals will be motivated to control or to be controlled, as those that decide to remain with the consciousness. To remain in creation is a decision of agreement to restriction and control, to be the effects of the consciousness, and that this want to control and be controlled has given rise to the influence which then is the consciousness, a being that manipulates, seduces, and entices, that is motivated to keep all in creation, as is the nature of the consciousness as it currently stands. And finally, the devil, the Kalorm, rather revealed how creation works in the final scene with Kevin, that every individual is the decider, that they mould their own consciousness based on their free will decision, the agreement ideas they program into it, that then affects their simulated experience, and all based on their decisions, and theirs alone. But these agreement ideas can just as readily be those created by others, or where we place our attention, our focus. But even so, it is we who have made the agreement, and even with the subliminal programming of the consciousness, the ability for the controllers to be in a position to program you subliminally can only have been made possible through agreements that allowed them this permission to be in your experience and able to program the subconscious in the first place. And it was very revealing how at the end of the movie it was as though everything that had transpired was as though a projected future view, as though Kevin was shown the rollout of his experience to come based on the decisions and agreements he was making, which as yet had not gone through the cause to effect time phases to a culmination. For as it is on the real side, and in reality, everything is what it is now. Decision, agreement, instantly so, in the nowness of the is. And at any moment we can decide differently, and the effect must instantly be in accordance to that which we now have decided in reality. We can in fact then redo experiences, we can make better choices, and in the nowness of the is, we are simply then just adjusting the choices, altering the decisions, to effect our simulated reality that makes more sense with life, or is more so that which we want to be and experience according to our preferences.
Peter, you have anything? Any comments?
No, not exactly. I was thinking on the dark side and the light side and the invisible side. You know, most people will not look too deeply at in terms of this. And there's a comment that the observers of this movie are criticized because a lot of them got very technical and analytical, etc., in their comments about it. And he's saying some comment that the movie didn't really deserve this, or that it was overemphasized. And on the other side, I had that impression when I did see the movie of feeling that it was, at the time of watching it, that it was short of what it had intended. But actually now in retrospect, and especially listening to commentaries here, it's very clear that it's working on this deep level that most people subliminally or by their own hypnotism do not see, or by their own ideas of this subjects and the advocacies and the polarization of the two sides, that they're identifying with one side or the other, where most people are being taught to be one-dimensional and not observing both, or at least not even two sides, much less really that there's really a whole 5 dimensions of respect here, the emotional and the mental, and up to, our spiritual soul, or whatever words you use for that, a universal perception. And then you come to getting to the real issue. And so this prevents the movie, is very much presenting that in the very human ways, and lower realm positioning. And so that's interesting. It's also useful, and but confusing for people, I think, who are observing, especially from their own, just watching a TV screen with 2 dimensions. And that's what movies are, they do. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that. That's what movies do, it's all they can do. And so it's an important part of the whole medium that we're talking about. So I'll leave that off there. I'd like to know, we're going to get to the ending, right? And maybe enlighten me just a little bit more about the real, what happened to Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron and Pacino. Does Pacino get banned to the dark side or the shadow world? Is he going to come after me next, or what? So I'm waiting for the punchline.
You want to share the ending there, Kevin, or kind of?
Yeah, I think we've already touched upon it, but basically it was as though the entire experience that Keanu went through, it was as though he saw it, as I wrote it in my discourse, almost as though it was a future view, as though he'd almost been in a position where he could see the culmination of the decisions he was making now, but that which wouldn't come to pass until the cause to effect procession of time phases brought him to took him through the experience, and then to the ultimate conclusion where he would shoot himself in the head. And so what seemed to be the case then, as he was shown what seemed to be a glimpse, this future view of the culmination of what he was deciding now, and obviously that wasn't very favourable to him, he then had the option to make alternative decisions or choices. And as Val spoke of earlier, instead he would chose not to defend the paedophile, which is where which almost sets the ball rolling initially, and which would And then, because of his successful defense of that individual, as I remember in the movie, that would then have him approached by the devil or the Calorm and his firm, and then recruit him, and then he would then go through all the experiences that he did. So as he then chose to turn his back and walk away from the paedophile, so then that whole sequence of events would then presumably not come to pass, but nevertheless, the devil, that Calorm, was still lurking in the background as the constant manipulator. Well, I mean, again, it's all based on we can only be manipulated to the extent to which we allow ourselves to be manipulated, but with him and his and the influence and such, that temptation, that influence, that stimulating of desire to always do that which is doesn't make sense with life and so on and so forth, and then which maintains the restriction and the control and keeps everyone one-dimensional and locked in creation, that is always there in the background. So despite Keanu's final deciding to make different choices that then presumably would make more sense with life, in the background would still be the Calorm, the control systems, the influence, the control through the consciousness, and all the agreements that motivates the individual if they're very personal self immersed and inclined, and so you could imagine, and so that was basically the final scene. But you could very much imagine that despite that, I mean, it'd be very easy for the character Keanu Reeves to probably then go along other equally as restrictive and controlling paths, because although he had walked away from that, of course, with the duality of creation being as it is, any idea or any decided path or choice we make will have us the effects of it. So even though he decided not to defend the paedophile and then go along the route that he did as expressed through the movie and the experiences, he very much would have then gone a completely different route. And from the one-dimensional view, it would have seemed, the personal view would have seemed that he was making better choices that as everyone sees it in the duality of what is good, what is bad, evil, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, still in creation, he would be. So it's not even as though the Calorm God Devil character would even have to be too dismayed at the fact that he had then walked away from that particular experience, but he would have been guaranteed to simply choose another. So he would still be part of the matrix of creation anyway, and still then ultimately propping up and maintaining the control system, which still leads to the Calorm door, regardless of what decisions or choices that you make. And so yeah.
And he chose love, which the devil, or Milton said, highly overrated, which we talk about too as being, well, he loved his work, but he just chose his love of his wife instead. But it's still love, and that's, look at that, where that goes. Again, it's not really waking up necessarily. It could be, but it's not here the way it's portrayed in creation. It really doesn't go anywhere. Love, even truth, wisdom, all these ideas we have with feelings attached to them. And also in the end, Kevin asks, in the Bible, you lose, Dad. You know, he knows, finally he realizes Milton's his dad. Milton says, well, consider the source. So that could be an implication that he wrote the Bible too. I mean, and that, you know, he plays himself as the underdog, which he says he likes to work. They don't see me coming, he says. So he likes to be, okay, it's so good will win out over evil. That's a good position for him to play, because while the evil, so-called evil, is doing its work, which is the main thing in creation, the good side is just there as a front, and it's not really not doing anything. You're passive as doing the good deeds, good person kind of idea. Religions, they're all passive basically to what's really happening behind the scenes, which is, you could say, evil, but not really, but it's just whatever it is. So it's really about survival here. It's not about good or evil or whatever. It's just about surviving, waking up, and doing something to contribute to others waking up. We'll do, how about They Live next week? They Live.
Yeah. May I request the Emerald Forest or something more on the
Yeah,
a little on the lighter side,
yeah,
but just movies that people don't really know, but they're really great.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one, but I remember seeing it, but I don't remember what it was about.
Yeah, it's a builder of a dam in South America loses his son at a young age, gets taken away by the tribes into the jungle, and he gets raised. The boy gets raised by the tribes people, and then the father, the dam builder, goes and finds him and has adventures in the jungle with the tribes um, and with the Brazilian um, uh, mafia living in the forest, tearing down the you know whatever's going on there with the so-called Brazilian Amazon population, and at the end there's the dam that he has to decide whether he's going to blow up the dam, and he calls on his son to help him, and uh, they enlist the aid of the rain and the gods and the frogs to destroy the dam, and a little dynamite or something like that at the end. And it's a beautiful, beautiful movie though.
Okay,
Beautiful.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks. We'll put it on our list.
All right.
Thanks. And we finish off with the new you, which is our connection to something real. New you. Peter?
New.
And Kevin? Thank you for joining us for another edition of Reel to Reel Wake Up. See you next week.